Hi, welcome to Lanas y Ovillos. My name is Alba, and in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to make this vintage cape. To make this cape I used 2 balls of 100 grams of this merino yarn from the brand Casasol. I also used 1 strand of mohair, Italian mohair, also from the brand Casasol. 5mm needles, you can use straight needles or circular needles, and scissors and a tapestry needle. To start the cape you have to cast on 100 stitches. Cast on 100 stitches. You can use the way to cast on that you prefer. Once you have the 100 stitches, you have to start making one row with the knit stitch. You have to make the garter stitch. So make the knit stitch in all the stitches. Once you finish the first row, you have to repeat the same. You have to take the edge stitch and then make one knit stitch in all the stitches, one knit stitch around. You have to make 6 rows with the garter stitch. Remember, to make the garter stitch you have to work all the stitches with knit stitch, and now in the row number 7 you have to make 1 row with increases. Take the edge stitch, knit 2 and make 1 increase. How you have to make the increase? You have to knit the first stitch, make the knit stitch. You don't have to remove the stitch from the needle, and knit the back loop. Then continue with the 2 following stitches with 2 knit stitch. and then make another increase. Knit the front loop and knit the back loop of the same stitch to make the increase. This is what you have to repeat to the end. 2 knit stitches and 1 increase. 2 knit stitches and 1 increase. Now start the part of the rib stitch. You have to take the edge stitch, knit 2 and purl 1, and this is what you have to repeat to the end. Knit 2 and purl 1. Knit 2 and purl 1. Repeat to the end. You are in a row on the wrong side. Now row in the right side. You have to work a knit stitch when you find a knit stitch and a purl stitch when you find a purl stitch. Take the edge stitch, purl 2, and knit 1, purl 2, knit 1, purl 2, knit 1. This is what you have to repeat to the end. Row number 3 of the part of the rib, you have to make the same that you made on the row number 1. Take the edge stitch, knit 2, purl 1, knit 2, purl 1. This is what you have to repeat in all the rows of the wrong side of the rib stitch. And this is what you have to repeat to have 6 rows of the rib stitch. And now you have to start with the garter stitch again. Make 1 row with knit stitches in all the row, and make 3 rows with knit stitches making the garter stitch. On the row number 4, you have to start making increases again. Take the edge stitch, knit 3, and 1 increase. Remember, to make the increase you have to knit the front loop and the back loop of the same stitch. Knit 3 and 1 increase. This is what you have to repeat to the end. Now you are again in a row of the wrong side and you have to start the rib stitch again. Take the edge stitch, knit 2, and purl 1, knit 2 and purl 1. This is what you have to repeat, remember, in the wrong side of the rib stitch. Once you are at the end, row number 2, row in the right side, you have to take the edge stitch, purl 2, knit 1, purl 2, knit 1, purl 2, knit 1. And in this case we have to repeat the rib stitch to have 8 rows. Now, once you finish the 8 rows of the rib stitch, you have to make again another part of garter stitch, 4 rows of the garter stitch. If you want to continue making increases, if you want the cape larger, you have to make increases on the 4th row of the garter stitch. On the previous rows you made 2 stitches and 1 increase, 3 stitches and 1 increase. You should continue with 4 stitches and 1 increase. Remember making the increases on the 4th row of the garter stitch. And then if you don't want to make increases, you have to make 4 rows with the garter stitch and then repeat 10 rows with the rib stitch. Remember to make the rib stitch on the wrong side, knit 2, purl 1. This is what you have to repeat to the end, and in the right side, purl 2, knit 1. You have to repeat the rib stitch and the garter stitch to have the length of the cape that you want. In my case, the last part of the garter stitch I made 6 rows of garter stitch. Instead of 4 rows I made 6 rows. On the row number 6 you have to bind off the stitches. Remember how you have to bind off. You have to take the edge stitch, knit 1, pass the first stitch over the second stitch, and continue making the same. Knit 1 and pass the first stitch over the second stitch. Knit 1 and pass the first stitch over the second stitch. You have to bind off all the stitches of the cape. Here you can see the beginning of the cape, the top part of the cape. You can see the 2 parts where you made the increases, and then you have to make 1 part of rib, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parts of the rib stitch and the garter stitch, and at the end of the part number 5 is where you have to make the 6 rows of the garter stitch and bind off. This is the size that I made with my cape, but remember that you can make it larger or shorter if you prefer. Once you bind off all the stitches, you only have to sew the sides of the cape with a tapestry needle.